Delighted to say we are joined by the former FC Halifax Town management pairing of Chris Millington and Andy Cooper. Thanks for joining us, gents. Are you both well?
Yeah, very good, thanks. We're well. I speak for myself. I'm in good spirits, well rested, and happy to be here.
How about you, Coops?
Yeah. Thanks for having us on. All good. Yeah, had a break, had a holiday, got away, got a bit of sun, so all good. Thank you very much.
Excellent, good to hear. I mean, obviously, we'll kind of start then with a little bit about what you've been up to most recently, I suppose, and work his way backwards. So, obviously, it's been 3-4 weeks or so since your departure from Halifax. What have you been doing with yourselves? How are you filling your spare time besides coming on 2-bit podcasts like ours?
Yeah, well, this almost feels like the first day of any kind of work-related activity for me, to be honest with you. I've obviously had a little bit to do with the club and with the chairman. I managed to get a few days away with one of my daughters over the half term. I've got a couple of kids who were doing A-levels and GCSEs, so it was just me and my third daughter managed to get away for a few days, which was great. And then last week was at St George's Park on the LMA Diploma in Football Management, which was great. That was real insight, some fantastic speakers and some really good people on the course. So not a lot of time to just get my feet up, but enough things going on to create a little bit of time for rest for sure.
How about you, Coops?
I had a little bit immediately at the aftermath of the season. I went away, so I had a break with the family over half term, and then my exit of Halifax was a little bit more prolonged, a little bit later. So in the last week's just been tidying that up, and then fortunate to be on the LMA diploma as well, which is a really great week. Again, back to business today, kind of first day at it, back into to make sure we stay in a routine and stay fresh. And we've met up a couple of times just to go through some of the reflections and reviews of our time and areas that we've done well and areas that we want to look at and maybe have a greater knowledge and insight of. So, but it's been a nice break so far.
Magic. So let's get stuck into it, chaps, because I know that fans will be wanting to listen to it, and I know that you've got your thoughts as well. So let's start right from the beginning. Obviously, Chris, you were there with Pete Wild at Halifax previously, and then obviously took on the number one hot seat, so to speak, and almost getting Andy in as his assistant was one of those that, I don't know, was a happy accident, I'm guessing, and it just seemed to kind of flourish from there.
Yeah, I think it was staying on when Pete moved on to Barrow. The decision really was based on the fact that I didn't think we'd really sort of achieved what we could. I didn't think we'd fulfill the potential within the club. Of course, we'd done well, and the club always bats above its average in terms of the performance versus budget, that conversation. So that was no surprise that we outperformed the budget and outperformed our league position in that sense. But I didn't feel like we'd really achieved what we could at the club. So the decision for me to stay on was really based around that, really taking the bull by the horns and trying to drive it forward in terms of recruitment, in terms of bringing in better financial assets, in terms of player recruitment, but also trying to compete more consistently at the top end and push for promotion, which in my heart I still believe is possible for the club. But that was the decision. Then bringing Andy in was a no-brainer. His experience on the grass in terms of coaching, his ability around managing and organising a successful training environment was clear, but also his character, and he'd probably be embarrassed me saying this kind of stuff in front of him. But I think the way he operates in a values-based environment. So his honesty, his hard work, his level-headedness, all of those things were really attractive in wanting to bring him in and be part of what we were trying to do.
And you obviously need that as being, kind of new in that job as well, something that you've obviously wanted to push towards in your career. But having that person to lean on must be really helpful, who's got, kind of the same values as yourself, but can take a little bit of pressure off you and also challenge you as well, which I'm guessing is just even more critical as being a number one.
Yeah, so the key thing really is the values, because that there are tough times in football management. There's always going to be periods where it's a challenge, and having that alignment in terms of values when those tough times hit is really important. Having the ability to stay cool, stay calm, and not get too carried away when things are going well, but likewise, stay cool and calm when things are challenging is a really crucial characteristic, and Coops has got that in abundance. So that was always going to be the main thing, but also knowing that he understands the game as well as he does. He understands process, and I think one of the things that we would hail as a success at Halifax, and part of the foundation of what we've done well, is the processes that we've implemented, I think, are over and above the level in many respects. So but having somebody who can adhere to that, and that gives him then the foundation to be able to challenge me from a position of strength when decisions needed to be made, and he maybe saw things differently. So so there was plenty of that went on, but it was always done from a perspective of wanting to help and wanting us to be the best version of ourselves. So as a manager, having the reassurance of a number two who offers that is, it's hugely reassuring.
Over to you, Coops. I mean, it's always nice to be told that you're doing a good job as well, but obviously you've got a lot of experience in coaching both here and overseas as well. Was that the next step for you to get into that first team environment, having worked in a youth environment for a while?
Very much so. I think 17 seasons on the bounce I've done in youth football, from daily coaching on the grass to then management to other elements of the game, obviously in different continents, different countries. But when I came back and was settled in Leeds and was looking for a role, it was something that was, early discussions, and a mutual friend, Joe Sargison, who works for the FA, put us together after I'd come out of a spell at Leeds United. And the initial chats were really clear. Millie was really honest with what he wanted and where he was going with the direction of the club after Pete left. And I just felt it was now or never to try and step up. A huge challenge to take on, battling for 3 points rather than a development background. But the club largely had an element of that because of the youthfulness of the team, because of how Chris wanted to build his squad, because of the resources and the structure that we had. So it all married up and a perfect match. Chris and I met 10 years ago on a course at St George's Park on an FA course, and loosely kept in touch after that. And then you go your separate ways, like what often happens on these courses. But then to be reintroduced by somebody that we both have got so much time and respect for was great. So when he, Joe suggested that it would be a good match for me to get a look at the project and what Chris was building at the club, I was, all in. And, we didn't have the best of starts, and probably that period forged the relationship and the working relationship that we had to be able to get ourselves out of it. We got great support from the chairman. The processes were getting in place. We had to change a lot, and ultimately, obviously, we've had the journey that we've had. But now the step into first team football, when bills need to be paid and mortgages on the line, you need to make sure that you can graft and make sure that you're ready to, execute what the manager wants. And Chris has had that in abundance. He came in stepping up from an assistant role and was able to obviously lead the club to the journey that we've been on.
Obviously, you get yourself feet under the desk, so to speak, in that first summer with both yourselves. What was that like, first of all, for you, Coops, in terms of building that squad, building that unity, and putting your thoughts and values across to the players? Was that something that was difficult to do? Was it a challenge, or was it something that you embraced straight away and everybody took it on board?
Yeah, it was a big challenge because we were losing key players straight away. From day one of pre-season, there was player sales, and we had a lot of trialists come in. We had a difficult time. The training ground wasn't ready. They'd re-laid the pitches. We had to train. My first session at Halifax was on a rugby pitch with a rugby post up, no goals. So straight away, you just chucked into adversity and challenge. We always know pre-season is a real difficult time for us. It's a period where there's a lot of overhaul, you've a lot of rebuild, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's player activity, you're trying to bring lads in, we're getting gazumped in terms of offers to players. So there's a lot of hard work, and all while that's going on, you're trying to build your identity, you're trying to get your squad settled, you're trying to get an organisation of how you're going to hit the ground running. And we'd have to say, that in each of the seasons, that's really hard for us. What we do find, and one of the great things about having Chris's experience of being an assistant there was he was prepared for that, although it hurt and it was hard work. What he was really good at is telling me that he'd been through it before, and the club always finishes strongly. I'm sure we'll touch on it. It's only probably the season that's just gone where the injury crisis hit, and we really had to dig in, and we really struggled. But prior to that, we were flying. The season before, the same as well, and then the season where we ultimately got in the FA Trophy, we only lost a couple of games in the last 15. So we know it takes a long time to build, but it's hard at the start. It's hard to see some of the work and some of the graft that goes in that ultimately isn't getting the reward at the start. And in a first team environment, the pressure's on right at the start. It's the results, the performances are there for everyone to see. You're in you're representing a club, a town, a fan base who have got expectation, and that was difficult at the start that we had.
And obviously, Chris, your thoughts as well, getting your feet under that desk. We were just speaking to Coops, obviously, about getting that team and that values together, ready for that first season in charge. How was it from your perspective as being, so to speak, the main man and getting everybody together and trying to hit that season run as quickly as you could?
Yeah, it was a whirlwind, really. I mean, there's so much that you have to do at Halifax, because there's a limited number of staff. There's a limited amount of resources. You're dealing with all kinds of things, but focusing really on the main thing, which was getting players in the building, because obviously, as is often the case at the end of every season, you have a high turnover of players. There's the better ones, obviously, provide a platform for themselves to move on to things bigger and better, either financially or in terms of level. So you're always looking at the recruitment aspect and June.
It's okay, Chris. You can say that Pete didn't do you any favours by taking a couple with him to Barrow. It's okay. You can say it.
He's my mate. I ain't going to throw him under the bus. But no, listen, it's the same story year in, year out. And I think what's changed for Halifax is that so many teams in the National League now have moved forward in terms of budget. I mean, 1.25, 1.5 million, that budgets are kind of almost standard these days. And we hadn't really, our budget, it had gone up a little bit, but certainly not in anywhere near the same terms as the other teams in the top half of the table. So it becomes more and more difficult every year recruiting, and you have to have a plan and a structure to how you're going to compete, because you can't just compete in financial terms. So that was really where all the focus went for me in the early stages, was working as hard as I could to maximise the potential of the budget, to make sure that we remain competitive and tried to continue the success that Pete had.
Fair to say, though, it wasn't a bad season, wasn't it?
No, it started terrible, like Coops alluded to earlier. The first 15 games, I mean, the first 5 or 10, we played really well. We had some really good performances, but we couldn't get ourselves the points on the board that we needed, and that's where the chairman was fantastic. He's very, very good at that chairman manager relationship. He does a very good job in alleviating pressure and helping you stay focused on actually what's important, the process, and trying to get points on the board. And he was fantastic then. And then after that, we went on a really strong run throughout autumn. Then we had a little bit of a wobble again through January and into February, but then we finished the season really strong. I think we lost one game in the last 14, and that was Chesterfield away. So, no shame in that at all. And obviously finishing the season, lifting the FA Trophy, it's, the stuff of dreams, isn't it? So yeah, it was a great season, and such a fantastic amount of learning went on for me. I'm sure Coops would say the same. I came out of that season a different man professionally, different from maybe some of the edges just rounded off a little bit, and some of my priorities were just a bit more focused and a bit more clear on how to work and how to operate. So yeah, really valuable experience.
And obviously, based on that season where you finished 11th, but you talk about having something on your CV, something that you can always look back on the memories. We hear about it, though, even at top level now, that getting into the top 4 or 5 sometimes is even better than getting a trophy. But come on, chaps, I mean, going to Wembley, winning a trophy like that, that's just childish stuff, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I think we win stuff. I think that's what we've proved, in terms of, every season we've beaten the eventual league winners. at home this year, Barnet. You know, obviously the Good Friday Wrexham game where nobody beat Wrexham. You know, certainly nobody expected us to beat them, and we beat them convincingly on Good Friday at the Shay. Our fans outnumbered 2-1, and we went on and did it. And then obviously last season we beat Chesterfield at home. So, you know, we beat teams. We go on runs and we put things together in that sense. And I think there are. You know, there are managers out there who will focus heavily on making sure that they have a brand and a style. We've got that, you know, we've got that ability to produce teams that can dominate possession and can play a certain style of football. But over and above that, we want to win games and we want to be successful in hopefully winning trophies, but also successful in terms of relative league position. And I think the time at Halifax has given us an ability to do that.
In terms of that FA Trophy run, though, in that first season, I mean, remarkable for the simple fact that there was no home games in the entirety of that run. I mean, talk us through a little bit about that. I mean, obviously penalty shootouts were key as well, but it doesn't matter how you get through the respective ties, does it? It's just getting there and getting the job done in the end. Yeah,
and I think that's it. I think, you know, we do have that ability when our backs are against the wall to pull out a result. You know, we've done it time and again over the course of the 3 seasons. The first season, you know, we were off the back of a horrendous defeat at home to Woking in autumn, and then we backed that up with one of the best performances of the season, beating York City at home a few days later. We had a similar occasion in that first season where we were off the back of a disastrous 1-0 defeat to Maidenhead at home, and then we backed that up with one of the best performances of the season against Wealdstone, putting 5 past them. So, you know, we've got that ability to grind out results in difficult situations, and that season in particular was highlighted in the FA Trophy run. I don't know about Coops, but certainly my memories of the Altrincham game were the semi-final were great. First of all, it's a club that's quite close to me geographically, so that was good. My kids go to school there, so that was even better. They had bragging rights, but you know, we were under the cosh for the best part of 60 minutes, and then we were very good for the last 30, and you just felt it was building, it was coming, and we were going to score. And then once Millie Ali scores that wonderful equaliser, everyone in the ground knew we were going through. They knew it was going to be the Shaymen going to Wembley. It was just the penalties were just a matter of course, really. So yeah, great season in that respect. You know, getting things over the line, getting the job done when it really mattered.
I mean, we have had a few comments and questions coming from Town fans, and a couple of them, including I think one from Nathan Wright, who specifically said that we had to ask you about your view, you know, being on the dugout when then final penalties were going in at Altrincham away, because he was saying that for him it was one of his favourite Town moments, having watched them over the years. I mean, Coops, what was your view of it like from the dugout in that technical area after the as you say, that dramatic equaliser, forcing penalties, and then obviously I think the kids call it scenes nowadays from the away end at Moss Lane.
Yeah, scenes and limbs in the away end. I mean, getting there was a change because we were terrible in quite a lot of games. We ground out results, but we had, I think, some games we couldn't name enough players on the bench. We couldn't fill a bench. We had players happening on the coach on the way down to a game. We had, I mean, it is not just a recording, but a book as well. So we had an absolute journey and a half just to get there. As Millie said, we weren't great. We ground it out, but when Millie scores, Pogs, the gaffer, just straight away know it's Big Sam. It's what he does. We don't lose penalty shootouts. We're going through. Lads are rattling the net behind the goal. They're trying to get the penalties moved to the other end of the ground to say it's not safe. We're arguing back. So it was all just chaotic. We'd like to say that we were a measure of calm on the touchline and enjoying the moment, but we were just trying to make sure that the penalties weren't switched ends because of what was going on behind the goal mouth. But it was incredible, and yeah, I think a few fans spilt on the pitch, didn't they, as well? And there was some, it was absolutely mad, and the realization that, you know, not just what we'd achieved to get there, but then the focus was straight on making sure that we had a a plan and we had to go and now win it. We didn't want to just make sure with the team that got there. We wanted to go and win at Wembley.
I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes, which is practically impossible going into a cup final at Wembley. And obviously we'll move on to other stuff, but this is one of the biggest achievements that we're talking about in our region in non-league, and a lot of fans have got this memory to take with them forever. What is it like as a management duo? Let's start with you, Chris, if that's all right. I mean, Andy, you can follow up after. What is the build-up like going into a cup final at Wembley, where you know you're going to play Gateshead, who have got a particular style of football, with a manager that's up and coming like yourselves? What does it feel like? What do you do in those 5-6 days to get yourselves mentally prepared and the players physically and emotionally ready for that massive occasion that some of them, with respect, might not ever get again?
Yeah, it was strange. The first thing was it was 3 weeks between the end of the season and the trophy final, so it's quite a lot of time to fill. So there was a lot of effort went into planning and making sure we prepared as effectively as we could, and we had games planned along that period of time to make sure that we had lads who were match ready, because there's a danger that you become rusty in that period of time. So that was a big focus for us. And like Coop said, we wanted to go there and win. So, I remember speaking to Frank Sinclair. I spoke to a number of people about the experience of playing at Wembley, and Frank said something that really stuck with me. He said there's nothing worse than losing at Wembley. And so that stuck in my head. I thought, I don't want that. I don't want to be coming away, trying to paint it as a positive, having got there and having, oh, what a great experience, none of that nonsense. I wanted to come away having won. So that was a big focus for us, was making sure that we went into the game with a really thorough game plan and tried to banish some of that thinking in the players that, we've achieved something by getting to Wembley, because coming away as a loser wouldn't be half as enjoyable. It wouldn't be enjoyable at all. So that was a big focus. And then the challenge really for me was trying to eliminate some of the emotion and some of the relationships that might influence my decision making in terms of team selection, because there were certain players who over the time I'd worked with them had earned the right to be in contention, but then also I had to balance that off with what's the best game plan going up against Gateshead in a Wembley final, and how are we going to beat them. So that personally, that was a challenge that I had to bring lads off the bench who felt, and rightly so, they'd done enough to start the game and deserved to start, but with the game plan that we'd built to try and go and win the game, it actually meant that they may be more effective coming into the game at a later stage. So that always sticks with me, that it's not easy, that, and it shouldn't be underestimated what a manager has to go through in those moments, putting aside some of the personal relationships and almost forgetting some of the good work that people had done to put themselves in a position, because it was all about making sure that we had the right team to go and win that game.
Andy, yourself, your thoughts on that? I'm guessing you're going to say similar, but what's your role as a number two? Is it a bit of that go between Chris and the players, or is it basically you and Chris take on the wheel, so to speak, and get the plan together?
Andy, we can't quite hear you for some reason.
Unfortunately,
we've lost the sound. We'll see if we can get Andy back.
Yeah, we'll get Andy back. Yeah, I mean, in terms of that, Chris, obviously, we'll just get Andy back due to technology stuff. What was that like as well, working with Andy to formulate that plan, like you say? I mean, if you're able to, if your sound's working again, what was that like as a balance and act between yourselves?
No, he's still quiet. I'll paraphrase what I think he's probably saying. I think it was we worked really hard, and neither of us have played at Wembley, managed, coached. Neither of us have had that privilege before. So we're very keen to get out and about and make sure that we understood what the stresses and what the strains were and what the challenges were. And speaking to players who played in the playoff final just a few days earlier was really useful, and people who had the experience of not only playing but managing at Wembley, understanding the different periods of the game was crucial for us. And that was a big part of the preparation, canvassing opinion of people who we trusted who might be able to help. But the experience is surreal. I can't describe it. It was just like walking into your dream, really, and living it for the day. Phenomenal.
Is it something that you imagined in your career, though, from when you were getting your coaching badges and working your way up in working in the game? Was it something that you always kind of visualize, or is it just something that it just happened and it's almost like you've just got to embrace every single moment of what's happening around you?
Yeah, I think until the situation occurs, I couldn't prepare myself. I'm not the type of person who can sort of live that dream ahead of time. Until it was actually the day of. In fact, it was the day before we went to Wembley for the first time, and that's when it just started to sink in a little bit that this was a reality. You get to have a look round, prepare yourselves by seeing the changing rooms and the facilities that you're going to be using, and the lads get a sense of the scale of the place. So that was really good. That was a fantastic day, but that was when it started to hit home, the magnitude of what we were about to experience. But then when you're in the game, you're just in a game and you're just trying to manage it, and you're trying to make sure that you take on board all the things that people have said about, the time when the fatigue will hit certain players and the legs start to go, and looking out for those signs of when you need to start making the substitutions and doing the things that you plan to do to really implement the game plan.
Magic. I think Andy's, bless him, is having a few technical issues, bless him, but we'll try and get him obviously in. So, Andy, can you hear us? We're struggling into it, unfortunately.
Is the technology demon terrible? So this doesn't bode well.
It's fine. So hopefully we can get Andy back in. In terms of, obviously, without going into too much detail, we can move on with this. Celebrations wise, let's talk about celebrations, because that's part of it as well. You work hard, you play hard. What were those celebrations like? Let's be honest, Chris, we do have younger people watching this, so let's keep it PG. But it's something that I'm guessing some of it stays on tour as well.
Yeah, nothing really dramatic to report, unfortunately. There'll be nothing that makes it into the memoirs in 20 years that'll raise any eyebrows. It was pretty tame, to be honest. I think because of the stage of the season and because of the build-up, there was quite a lot of exhaustion. So we celebrated straight after we got over to a hotel within a couple of 100 yards of Wembley. The chairman had hired a bar out up the top floor of that hotel, so we managed to get some time in there. And then when we got back up to Leeds, which was where we'd set off from, the lads were out and about around Leeds, but there was an awful lot of fatigue, and there were an awful lot of people who were desperate to get away on holiday. So there was nothing massively dramatic to report back, which is a little bit disappointing, and probably should be more to tell off the back of a momentous and historic victory at Wembley. But no, there was nothing particularly dramatic that went on, Lewis.
Coops, are we back?
Just as we think we're going to get him back perfectly.
Oh, he's here.
Can you hear me, gents?
Yes.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Chris has just been, sorry, Andy, but Chris has just been telling us about all the wild things you get up to celebrating the FA Trophy win.
I was absolutely shattered, just went to bed. I was absolutely gone. I was drained. I think, personally, I had my sister-in-law, family from Hull. They took 50 people on a coach down. She booked a coach. Whole family went down. My mum was knitting scarves, hats. All the kids went down, and I just had to remove myself from the WhatsApp group in all the planning of it, and just focus on supporting Chris. We helped get a good training ground on the way down at Leicester and make sure we were best prepared, which I might have missed you talk about, and just did a lot of the background work with the staff to revisit games against Gateshead. We had the record against them previously, and and just make sure I tried to remove much emotion. I think my missus would probably say that's a strength, to be quite emotionless in that situation. But I just had to never wanted to let the opportunity go by, and just had to grasp it, and just went all in on doing the best I could to support the lads and make sure that, you know, ultimately, I don't know how anyone else feels who was involved. And I spoke to Jamie Cook a couple of days ago, and I told him I just can't remember the game. I can't remember anything about the game. And I just maybe would best leave it at that. And I know when he scored, I remember the goal. I've seen it loads, but the actual full game, I've never watched it back. I just had no recollection of what happened. Although a fan did tell me at one of the events that we weren't very good. But there we go.
Who cares? Who really cares about performance? It's all about results. So obviously moving on from that, and we'll kind of speed things up a little bit, but was there a feeling between you guys on the back of that FA Trophy win that there was an opportunity to really kick on, or were you a little bit anxious that some of the other players may be poached by EFL clubs? What did that feel like as a duo when you kind of the dust had settled, you're ready for next season? Was there a bit of, which way could this go now? Because I'm guessing you guys absolutely want to kick on to the next level.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think it was excitement for me. I think the win highlighted what we were capable of. I thought there were two very strong periods within the season where we played really good stuff and we'd been really effective. There were a couple of poor periods as well, by the way, but there was enough positive periods of football within the season that was encouraging. And we felt that, well, I always know that it's not, we were never going to have the finances at Halifax to just be able to go out and buy a promotion team or to get a guaranteed playoff winning squad. So I knew that it was a process. I knew that it would take 2, maybe 3 seasons to really build the quality and the depth to be able to seriously compete for promotion. So that was what was on my mind at the time going into that close season, was right, how do we now make sure that we build on this foundation, move forward and become even more competitive in the league, which I think is always possible at Halifax. I think the great thing about the environment, the great thing about the geographical location is that you can recruit good, honest, hungry players, and that's what allows you to compete at the top end of the division.
And obviously from your perspective, Coops, going into that season, successful season, getting in the playoffs as well, that was something that I'm guessing you guys had earmarked possibly behind the scenes and between yourselves as a group of players and staff. That's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, that we needed a strong finish. We needed to continue to get buy-in. It helps with recruitment as well. So when we returned in the summer, we were able to try and sit down with players, and we had a bit of a body of work behind us now, rather than just talking about what our plans were. We were able to evidence it and show it. But, you know, in the pre-season and, you know, this time a couple of years ago, we were sitting down with players and ultimately getting gazumped by teams in the league below, 2 leagues below on one occasion. And reality bites, really. You know, that straight away, some of your body of work stands up, but doesn't help you in trying to negotiate to try and get players in the building that we thought would help us. But we had a core of a group that we felt had shown that they were able to compete at that level and push us up the table. So we started in a good spirit, really. I know we lost a couple early doors, a couple of players moved on, and it can derail stuff. But ultimately, we felt we're in a good place to kick on as a management duo with some good staff around us.
In terms of that playoff game, and I'm sorry to bring it up because I'm guessing it does haunt you slightly, that game at Solihull, what did it feel like? Because you felt there was an opportunity there, and for whatever reason, you know, the odd team mistake, individual mistake, it just didn't work out. It's one of them days that I'm guessing as a manager and an assistant, you just go, oh, what if? Chris, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that, you know, it's a relief to see the pitch being done at the Shea, because I think it's cost us the last 2 seasons, really. You know, I'm certainly not one for making excuses, but I think there's it's had an impact for sure. The season we're talking about, we were 4 games in 8 days coming into the end of the season. We were playing home games at neutral venues, which is you know, it improves the chances for the opposition and makes it more difficult for what's supposed to be the home team. The Thursday night we play away at Chesterfield, and it was like a we were playing Oldham at Chesterfield's ground. It was like a midwinter's game. It was horrendous. And then we're immediately off down to Eastleigh, and the league, in their wisdom, had set the kick-off time for midday. So we play Thursday night. We've got to get down to Eastleigh for a midday kick-off. You know, something like 38 hours between games, and within that you've got a 6 or 7 hour trip. So far from ideal. And then we had the chaos of who we play in the playoffs because of the situation with Gateshead. And we ended up at Solihull. And I think you saw in the first half hour of the Solihull game the impact of the run up to it. So, our performance, we looked sluggish, we looked leggy. They were good, by the way, and they backed that up with a good performance at Barnet following that. But, we looked tired for the first half hour, and it's not a surprise. We were rolling the same players out over and over again. I think the back four stayed the same throughout those 4 games in 8 days, 5 games in 11 days. And that had an impact. So that cost us early on. We pulled the game back to 3-2, and then Rob Arker at the underside of the bar, and but for the width of a coat of paint, we'd have been 3-3. And I think everybody at that stage would have backed us to go on and beat Solihull. It wasn't meant to be, and in the best efforts of chasing the 3rd goal, we go and concede a 4th. So yeah, but and again, we'll come on to it, I'm sure. But this season again has been a challenge with the pitch. It's had an impact in a different way, which has probably hurt our chances of competing. But yeah, that was it. What a set of lads. You look at Jamie Stock playing every minute of every game, and when we were off down to Eastleigh, I'd said to him during the week, look, if we don't need points at Eastleigh, Stotty, I'll give you the choice of whether or not you want to have a rest, and he's off, and he just, nope, definitely not, want to play, regardless of the situation, start me, I want to play. And we've got a number of lads who've been like that over the course of the 3 years, just desperate to contribute and deliver for the club. So yeah, there you go.
Is that something that you chaps would pride yourselves on in terms of that recruitment, of getting the right players in, both ability-wise, but we spoke about that values and that character aspect of it. That must be something that you can definitely look back in your time at Halifax and go, what, we got some good players in here. You looked at the guys you signed from Stockport, Keane, Stott, Minahan, they're all winners, they're all leaders in their own right. We've seen Ali, which we spoke about earlier, going on to bigger, better things, which must be frustrating to see them sometimes not be at the club that you're at that time, but you've got them right players and they're almost bonded together in the right way to achieve the same outcome. I mean,
yeah, Coops, I'll just come in on the first bit, Coops, and then if you want to come in around the character and the types of players we've gone for. But I think the measure of success is the fact that we've got 15, maybe 16 lads now over the past 3 seasons who've progressed into the Football League from us. So, we've raised, a significant amount of money for the club through player sales. And I mean a significant amount of money. I would... certainly right up there in terms of what's come into the club financially through recruiting players for nothing. We've not paid fees. I know there was a rumour of a fee, a nominal fee for one player, but we've not paid anything that would constitute a fee in most people's minds. And yet we've managed to remain competitive and do so whilst losing players, and losing the likes of Millie Ali in a January transfer window, does affect the team and affect the progress. A top goal scorer like Andrew Olawabori at the time when we lost him in January affects the team. And then, also losing Billy Waters, who of course wasn't, he was a loanee when he went to Oldham, but, top goal scorer and somebody who was really crucial to us. It's not like we're losing poor players. We're losing very good players. So to have progressed, helped. Sorry, it's certainly not something that we've done. We've been part of the journey of a number of players who've progressed into the Football League. But to do that and be part of that journey is incredibly satisfying, and certainly a real joy for me. It's part of the job that I really love. But it's got to be recognised. It does hurt the team, especially when it happens mid-season.
just before you come in, Andy, I just want to kind of interject really with, honestly, it might be quite a blunt question, but purely from a football fan's perspective, how frustrating is it as a manager when you see these player sales, the fees are coming to the club, and look, on the face of it, given everything that people know in terms of Halifax not having one of the bigger budgets in the league and how competitive that division is, how frustrating is it to not be able to actively reinvest and pay out some fees? Because obviously you're in a league with a benefit where there isn't a transfer window that shuts until the end of March. Obviously, with the injury issues you've had over the last couple of seasons as well, how frustrating is it as a manager where that money is back into the club through player sales, and you're still stuck with nothing to spend to add to the squad and to invest?
Yeah, well, I think if you ask my wife, she was more frustrated that there was never a pay rise. I think that was probably that was where the family were wounded. But I think from my own perspective, I understand the practicalities of running a football club with a low fan base, with high costs and a challenge, and there's not Mr. Buzzenworth, I think, is great in terms of his running the club in a frugal manner. We've certainly raised money through player sales that I think, if for me, the best way to invest that is to then nail down the next group of players. So you get to October, November, and the likes of Adam Senior and Ryan Galvin and Jack Evans, when they're playing regular football, when they're happy, when they've got a whole long season to look forward to, you look to reward them with a pay rise and a new contract at that stage. And then you secure the future of the team over the next 2 to 3 years. That's really the way I would like that money to be invested. But listen, I understand the practicalities aren't that straightforward. And it is difficult for a manager when you're managing a club with tight resources. You understand that those things don't go very far and have to be invested across the club, not just in the playing staff. But yeah, there's definitely ways that could be improved. And I think, looking to nail down good staff, I think that's, an important part of it. I think, it's one thing to be able to compete with a low playing budget. And I would say that is very possible. I think you can, we've proved it. And I think, if that playing budget was increased, I was doing some stats recently with a statistician who he was looking at the seasons that we'd played, and if the playing budget was £1 million, which is still relatively low for a top 10 National League team, and we were a long way off that, by the way, but he was doing the calculations based on points per pound spent. And if you look at the points per pound spent for us, if you increase the money spent to £1 million over the course of the season, we'd have been looking at 97 points. So, the investment there is worth making and can reap a benefit. But the point I was getting to is, I think you can compete with a lower budget in terms of players, because you can get good people in to work really hard at recruitment, at coaching, at making sure that they deliver on a Saturday afternoon. But I think what's really important is making sure that you nail down good staff and keep them, because you can't have a low budget and a weak management team and staff. Those two things won't lead to success. You can operate on a lower budget with a good staff behind the scenes, but you can't operate without one or the other.
Go on, Coops. Obviously, your thoughts on bringing exactly based on what Chris has said, and the right characters, having the right, surround yourself with good people, bring success, doesn't it, ultimately? Oh, bless it.
We've lost your sound again, Andy. I don't know why. It was funny. We were chatting for a good 15 minutes or so before we started recording this. It was fine. And should we try it again? No.
Oh, might be come back in again. Sorry, Andy.
It's a shame.
So,
he is the bright one of the pair of us. He'd have something much more.
It's them trips away. That's he's not used to it. So yeah, I mean, let's kind of move on a little bit then. You mentioned earlier, Chris, and we'll obviously speak about, I think, in a general term with Coops later on, and surround yourself with good people and what your future looks like for you. But you mentioned there earlier this season, just gone, being a bit of a challenge. I mean, go for it, Chris. Obviously, we know the situation with the pitch at the Shea. Again, we've known players who've come and gone as well. It's been it's been an interesting one, and while you've still been achieving a really good sum of performances and results in this division with injury crisis you've had, etc. So, I mean, yeah, the stage is yours, sir.
Yeah, so I think the key sort of moments in terms of the squad over the course of the season were obviously we lost Kane Thompson-Summers in August, who was going to be a crucial part of the team this year, and that's that succession planning that we've done so well. We lose Millie Ali, but we've got Andrew Oluwabori ready to step into the breach. We knew that we were going to lose strong midfield players last summer, and we did that, but we knew that we'd done enough work, and Kane had done enough work to step up and lead that midfield role. But then to lose him in August, having not played a game, was a blow. That's a challenge. You're then having to accelerate the development of other players. Then obviously January, you lose Andrew Oluwabori, who was a key figure within our style of play and how we wanted to play. Billy Waters came in and did what Billy Waters does, and then all of a sudden we're losing him again in January, which isn't unusual when you've got a lone player in the building. So those were some of the challenges we had to navigate. The pitch caused problems with injuries. You're going from playing on what was an incredibly soft surface at times to then going to play York City away or Oldham away, where the surfaces are very firm, and that creates issues for players and results in injuries often. So we lost a significant number of our, let's be honest about it, first choice starting 11 to injury over the course of the season, and that created something of an issue for not only style of play but also towards the end the results became a bit more challenging. But I think the benefits, the positives out of the course of the season, there was a 20-game period where we had the majority of the squad available to us, and over that 20-game period we were second only to Barnet in terms of points. Over that 20-game period we were second only, I think, to York City in terms of possession stats and chances created and box entries. So we played a really decent brand of football in that period when we had the stronger players in the squad available to us. And then once you lose those, then we have to try and cover off some of the losses and some of the deficiencies within the starting 11 as a result, and that led to us having to change style, change tack, and maybe change our approach a little bit. But we feel like over the course of the season, given the challenges we had, it was a relatively successful season. And I think at times maybe people have to dig deep into the memories occasionally just to figure out which games I'm talking about. But York City at home, where we were really undone towards the end. Rochdale away at that period. There were a number of games where we played some fantastic stuff and one or two really positive results as well. So it is disappointing that maybe outside influences, the pitch, resulting in the injuries. And the pitch is a real leveller as well when it's been in the condition it's been in. You've got teams like Maidenhead and Braintree coming to town, and it plays into their hands much more than ours. So it did create some challenges, but one of the things we focus on is trying to be positive with the squad, make sure that they don't make excuses, make sure that we face adversity head on, and we do the best we can do in every situation. So I think that's probably the most pleasing aspect of what they've done this season.
Your thoughts, Coops, as well on this season that we just obviously expanded. It's been a bit of a challenge for you guys on and off the pitch a little bit, but how has it been from your perspective to try and manage the situation? That's been difficult, but one that, to get into the playoff is still a remarkable achievement.
I'm hoping you can hear me. If not, I'll leave you under Chris's. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Perfect.
I think we overachieve. I think the expectation of the club now, 4 seasons in the last 6 in the playoffs, I think is phenomenal. But when you're going through the difficult spells, it's hard. And obviously, I think for me, my biggest challenge was when Chris was on lead a group of men to represent him while he was in his recovery, and also we last, and also get the best out of the staff. They really stepped up and helped us get.
Oh, he's struggling. He's struggling, unfortunately, with Wi-Fi again. Yeah, I think that's a really fair point. Obviously, to kind of just take over a little bit. I mean, it's one thing, obviously, without getting into too much detail, Chris. You know, that was a challenge for yourself personally as well, I'm guessing, because obviously you've got to make sure that you're fit and healthy, while obviously making sure that, you know, the team, and that's why you have people like Andy in the staff we spoke about earlier, surround yourself with good people that you can trust people to do that job for you as well.
Yeah, they were phenomenal. The club were great. The chairman was great. Everybody rallied round. The players were brilliant. They stepped up and they saw an opportunity to really go that extra mile in terms of supporting Coops and the rest of the staff. People like Billy Waters, Sam Johnson, Will Smith, you know, really rallied round. They were fantastic, and you know, you really know you've done a good job. And this is where I'll maybe, I don't like taking credit because I think it's always a team effort, but I think the thing I can take credit for in this sense is recruiting the right people, because it's not often you find a manager, a figurehead comes out of a situation like a football team, and yet things carry on almost seamlessly. And that's what happened, and that's really a credit to the people who were in the building. And if I'm going to take any credit for anything, that's what I'd want the credit for, is bringing the right people in. Take
it for all it's worth, Chris. You put that in your back pocket. Obviously, just moving on to the end of the season before we get on to what's happened in the past, you know, few weeks and a month. Obviously, the playoff situation again, unfortunately, suffered defeat to Oldham. Have ultimately got promoted, so it's one of those that fans might go, well, we lost to the team that got promoted. But from a managerial perspective and a group perspective, that again is another tough one, a tough pill to swallow after the challenge you've had through the season to get yourself in a position to get in the playoffs again, but unfortunately just falling just that little bit short again. How was that from a collective group?
Yeah, painful, really. It always is, those moments, you know, to have the season end the way it did there and away at Solihull the season before is really painful, because you know, the game can end one or two ways. It can be jubilation and expectation in winning and progressing, or, you know, what we've experienced in both, in all the playoff campaigns, unfortunately, that I've been involved in with the club, where you sat scratching your head, wondering what's just happened and what you're going to do next, you know, because it's just over at the blow of a whistle. So it was tough. The manner of the defeat was very, very difficult. I thought, took credit to Oldham. I thought they were phenomenal. I've seen a lot of them this season, and they haven't played like they played in the playoffs all season. You know, they really came alive when it mattered. They were outstanding, and we were poor. You know, we struggled to get to grips with the magnitude of the game. There were mistakes I made. You know, I think I said it after the game. Mickey Mellon was better than me in how he approached the game, and I think their players were better than ours in terms of how they approach the game. And you know, when that's the case, if the management team and the players are better on one side as opposed to the other, then 99 times out of 100 they're going to win the game, aren't they? So we couldn't be bitter. We couldn't we couldn't point the finger at any bad luck or any hard luck stories. They were just better across the board, and painful as it is to admit, you know, that's the way it went. But, you know, I'm pleased for the club. It's a club that I know well. I'm pleased that they've finally had something to celebrate. It's been a tough few years for them over the last sort of decade or so. So I'm pleased for those people. I know we were still at the club, and but also I say that, you know, I remember watching the final, the playoff final, and I felt for Southend, because I see a lot of us in Southend. I think, you know, and they're probably significantly better off in terms of budget than we are, but they're certainly not one of those big hitters, you know, in the same vein as an Oldham, a York, a Forest Green. I don't think they probably even compete with a Rochdale in terms of what they spend, but I think what they do is they manage and coach extremely well. So So I would have been, delighted to see them succeed as well, because I think what they're doing down there is incredible.
Yeah, he has done a very good job, hasn't he, Kevin Meyer at Southend in particular. Sorry,
Yeah.
Lou.
No, it's fine. And I think because obviously, we've gone through the journey of yourselves at Halifax, and we always said, didn't we, from the outset, it's going to be a really open and honest conversation with you guys, which we really appreciate you talking about. But sorry for these hard questions, Chris. I do apologise.
Don't worry.
But is it one of those situations where you felt that would have been your final game at Oldham? Did it feel like that this could be it?
No, not really. I mean, going into the game, I felt tired. That's for sure. I knew there was some slight changes in the way I approached things in probably the final couple of months of the season. Just a sense of fatigue. Now, looking back now, I know that it was a sense of fatigue, but no, I didn't think it was going to be the end. But then by the end of the game, the sense that I knew, because we'd got beat, we were going to lose some really important players again, and it was going to be incredibly hard to keep hold of them. Had we got promoted, then it would have been a piece of cake keeping hold of the likes of Senior, Galvin, Evans, and any number of others. But losing that game made me realise that it was going to be incredibly tough to progress any further with that group. I'd need to work incredibly hard throughout June to recruit again, and it does take a lot of work. And the type of person I am, I can't switch off from that. When there's a real serious job to do, it occupies every waking thought. And regardless of my location, if I was sat on a beach in the Mediterranean, I'd still be completely occupied with, finding a left back to replace Galvin, and finding somebody to come in and do the same job that Adam Senior's done, and finding a lad as solid in terms of his character and what he delivers as Jack Evans. And I can't switch off. It just isn't possible. So the only way I was ever going to get a break from this was by getting promoted and retaining them players. So I knew really at that stage, once the final whistle went, that I was depleted in terms of what was required from an energy perspective to be able to go again. So I did take a few days. I spoke to the chairman, and he asked me to take a few more days, and I did. But yeah, I knew it was the right time, not only for me but also for the club, because the club needed somebody who could invest that energy, that fresh enthusiasm. And it's also a period in that cycle for them to recruit and recruit a team in their own image, which is important for a manager. You want to go in start the season with a team that reflects you. So there was a selfish element to the decision, but there was a selfless element as well, in that I knew it was the right time for the club to make a change as well.
In terms of the statement that obviously went out and kind of announcing your departure, Chris, one of the, I'm going to say, unusual things that was in it was how it was obviously stated that you were going to help the board in terms of seeking your own replacement and that sort of thing. First, just tell us a little bit about, for a start, how that process kind of worked, what the thinking was from both your side and from David Bosworth's side, the chairman's side as well.
Yeah, so listen, it sounds quite impressive, doesn't it? It sounds almost like,
It's very Alex Ferguson, David Moyes, isn't
it? Yeah, I mean, listen, to be spoken about in them kind of terms is a privilege, let me tell you. But no, it wasn't quite as grand as that. It was really the process went. It is a thorough process that David goes through, the chairman goes through, and it's a good process, to be fair. It is impressive how he goes about it, and having been on one end of it and then on the other, it's really interesting to see. So, but my part in that was very simple, really. It was just to facilitate a football conversation and really allow the shortlist of candidates. They only came in at the sort of latter stages, to allow the shortlist of candidates to express how they would manage the environment, manage the recruitment, manage the training program, really to ask questions that would then allow them to display their qualities in those areas. So it certainly wasn't a case of me picking the next manager. I'm not considered that important, but what I did was open up the conversation to to a more football-based conversation, so that those candidates could explain how they work, what they do, what their priorities are, what their values are around the football side of things, and talk that through so that the chairman could get a feel for those people in those terms. So yeah, it sounds pretty grand, but the reality is pretty tame. It was pretty boring, really, from that point of view.
You were able to just give them the tip of, yeah, don't bother asking for a bigger budget. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I'll be mortified if they've got a bigger budget. Honestly, I'll be asking for my job back.
Go on, Lou.
Yeah.
You kind of took the words out of my mouth about the budget stuff. Would that be infuriating if that happened, Chris? Let's be honest, because it could happen. You know, football's a funny old game, isn't it? We've seen managers in the past go to different places, and you're thinking, if only I had that little bit of extra, you know, pounds and pence in the back pocket. You mentioned what you're capable of doing. You know, if you had it, you know, up to £1 million budget, it's hard to not probably think, what if?
Yeah, well, that, like I say, the sort of discussions I've had with certain statisticians around, you know, working on the processes that we've worked, implementing the systems that we've implemented, and doing the recruitment that we've done, with an increase in budget of only a few £100,000 to £1 million, would more than likely, you know, following all the algorithms, would produce, you know, 97 points, which is a decent points total. And by the way, £1 million is still an awful lot less than what most teams in the top half are paying. I think probably only Tamworth in the top half don't hit those kind of numbers, but I wouldn't be surprised if everybody else does. Well, Tamworth and Halifax, I should say. But so there is that desire to maybe manage in an environment where there is a few more pounds available. I don't want millions. I'm not interested in going and spending like some of the top clubs in the division, £3 and £4 million over the course of a year. But, you know, a budget of 1 to 1.25 would be enough to be able to really compete for the top 3 places. What happens at Halifax, I don't know. One thing I do know for sure is during certain periods in my time as manager, the chairman's been really supportive. In the early stages, we had a huge bid come in for one of the players, but we'd already sold a couple in that window, and we had 1 or 2 injury problems, and he held firm and rejected a massive bid, you know, the highest that's been made in my time at the club, to help support me and make sure that we didn't lose a key player at that time. He's also put his hand in his pocket towards the end of this season to make sure that we could go and get players to cover off the injury crisis that we were experiencing. So, and listen, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a few quid that's been kept in reserve to try and push forward and cover off some of the players that we've lost this summer. I don't know that, you know, that's not a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. And really, I want success for the club. So if there is money available to help the club push for a top 3 position, then I would be right behind that, and I would fully support it. I think you know, the more competitive the club can be on every front, the better. And I would be happier than anyone to see the team get promoted into the EFL.
So obviously, like you say, you clarified a little bit of kind of how you felt towards the end of last season, and you know, obviously the conversations you've had with the chairman as well. What do you feel like now, Chris, as a person who's taken Halifax's, you know, as far as what people thought that could potentially happen in terms of a resource and everything available? Have you kind of made peace with the fact that unfortunately it's no longer that role that you're in? What do you feel like, both personally but within the game as well, professionally?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, really, because I did always believe that I was going to lead the team into the Football League. I genuinely thought that was going to happen. So to have to accept that's not going to be me is you know, it's tough, because I didn't have any other outcome in my mind. There was never any other ending to it. You know, I was going to get carried out of the Shay on the shoulders of the fans, you know, going, we did it. You know, that was the only way it was ever going to end, and it clearly hasn't ended like that. So that's disappointing. But again, I've said to the chairman, whilst I'm out of work, if there is anything that I can do to help facilitate the club moving forward and progressing and ultimately getting promoted, then I'm willing and I'm available in any capacity. So that'll always be the case, because I want the club to do well. What happens for me next, I don't know. I would love the opportunity to manage again. I'd love the opportunity to manage where there's a little bit more in terms of resources, finances, and maybe even expectation, maybe even a bit of pressure. I'd love that opportunity. I think the processes that we've implemented and developed over the last few years have really highlighted that we can maximise the potential within an environment. We can maximise the potential within a budget. We can maximise the potential within a group of players, and also individuals, by the way. Millie, Ali, Andrew, Oliver, Bori, Kane, Thompson, Summers. We've helped maximise the potential of a good number of players. So I'd like that opportunity again somewhere, but I ain't glamorous. I ain't a name. I ain't got a whole list of honours to sort of put up. So I've also got to accept that might be my managerial career done, and it might be that I have to look back at my time as Halifax as the pinnacle of any managerial career that I might want to have. So yeah, we'll see. Who knows? It's interesting because I think me and Coops are probably not the types of people who are going to be out there banging the drum, telling everyone how great we are. So you kind of hope that your body of work is enough and impressive enough for somebody to go, yeah, we'll have a bit of that. We like what they represent. We like what they're capable of doing. But until that situation occurs, I don't know. I hope and pray, but we'll see.
I mean, I can't imagine that, given the turnover of management across both, to be fair, the EFL and National Leagues in particular, that it won't be long before jobs start popping up. So I'm sure you have to get your name in a few hats at some point for that next move. Yeah,
I'd love the opportunity, and I think really the thing that I've learned over the last 3 seasons in particular, I learned a lot working with Pete, and that gave me a good grounding. But then being in the firing line and being in the eye of the storm, I suppose, teaches you an awful lot more. And what I've learned about me and I think us as a team is that we have the ability to maximise the potential within a certain environment, and like I mentioned a moment ago, that might be, squeezing every last drop we can out of the budget, or trying to help players maximise the potential that they've got and improving to a level whereby they perform for us, but also, have the ability to progress higher. And also the environment, we were fortunate with the training facilities at Halifax. They're very good. But I think we really made the most of that, and that helped us work with the individuals and the group on the grass to maximise their potential. So I think that's probably the thing that we can offer going forward, and competing at the top end of the division with a bottom end budget is something that I'm sure a lot of clubs would be interested in. But until those opportunities arise, then it's hard to know for sure.
Having been at St George's Park for all of last week, you'll be eyeing up the Burton Albion job if that comes along, I suspect.
Yeah, well, the facilities there, I'm not sure they train there anymore, but yeah, they used to train down at St George's, and it's such a wonderful environment. You're walking into the very best of the best, and it does feel different. It feels elite.
There will be when you're in charge, yeah. Just obviously, we're just touching it. Really appreciate you coming back, Coops. Just in terms of obviously leaving Halifax, I know it's been a little bit more prolonged for yourself as well, which got announced, 2-3 weeks ago. We just obviously heard from Chris about his thoughts of leaving Halifax and being able to just be part of a little bit of a process and just kind of transition and handing stuff over. From your perspective, leaving Halifax now, how does it feel for you both personally as a human being, in terms of where you find yourself at the moment, but also professionally in the game?
Yeah, just check you can hear me first, if that's all right.
We can. Super, thank you.
Yeah, a bit of a technological problems, but yeah, content with the work that I did, and what contributed to the club, and bittersweet to kind of leave, but ultimately I had a decision to make. I either had to maybe take the next step and speak to and apply for the role, or I had to find a way to potentially work under a new manager. And over discussions with the chairman, I was really honest and open. He was great with me and allowed me a bit of time. But ultimately, I didn't want to start a project that I potentially won't be able to finish, or start a new chapter or a new journey with the club. So if Chris came calling and gets his opportunity, as I'm sure you've alluded to over the last few minutes, in terms of a backroom staff, I'd love to be on the journey with him again and supporting him. So felt it was the right time to step back, have a breather. And it might not be a call like this now, but my phone hopefully is still working. So if he does get some, you can text me.
So obviously, like I say, in terms of that, was that a situation, from what you've just said, then potentially being the next manager of Halifax? Was that something that you had to explore yourself, and why is the time not right for you then at the moment, would you say?
No, not. It didn't take that long, to be honest. No, I'm content with my role as assistant manager. I feel that's a strength of mine. I feel I can work with Chris and develop good people and get staff and get the maximum amount of resources, beg, steal and borrow from the network we've got. So, I'm content with that. So it was never really something for me to really overly stress or worry about when I knew Chris had made his decision. I felt it was good for a fresh start for the club, and there might have been some suggestion that I could have stayed on to maybe support an interim spell and make sure the transition is a bit smooth. But I just felt it was the right time for me to step away as well, and have no regrets in kind of doing that. Felt with, ultimately the record and the legacy will be there, but the playoffs and the FA Trophy and the medal we've got at home will always be there. But I just feel it was the right time now, and my skill sets are best suited to the role I've got, or the role I had.
Magic. Well, we've got a few questions because we have gone out to the Shaymen fans to try and get some questions in for yourselves, if that's all right, if you're happy to answer a few.
Yeah, cool.
Brilliant. So we obviously heard a little bit from what Nathan asked earlier about the Alty semi-final. I'll put one question to you, Chris, and Coops, feel free to chip in as well. Do you actually believe it's possible for Halifax to achieve promotion with how it's currently operated?
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, listen, every season we started, people will think I'm insane, by the way, Lewis, but every season we started with the intention of winning the league. That's what we set out to do. And I've got no shame in saying that, however delusional people might think I am. But, that was the intention, and that was what we felt we should be striving to do. When we set out on the journey together, I had a clear vision in my head about how we were going to try and achieve that. I think what had changed by the end of it is I know in my heart that it's still possible, but because of the chaos of the industry, the chaos of football management, I'd maybe lost a bit of clarity in terms of the vision once I'm walking off the pitch at Boundary Park, having been on the wrong end of that result. So that was when part of the decision to step aside was because, although I still know it in my heart, I didn't quite have the clarity of vision to be able to sell to the staff, to the players, to the chairman, right, this is how we're going to do it next season. This is how we're going to go one better and get promoted. But I do genuinely believe it's possible. It's getting harder because, like I mentioned early on in the podcast, a lot of clubs are really increasing their resources over the course of the time I've been in the division. When I joined Halifax Town, we were probably a mid-table budget. We were one of a high number of hybrid teams within the division, and since that time we've slowly slipped backwards down the scale in terms of budget to much nearer the bottom of the division in terms of budget. And also now there's one, maybe two hybrid teams in the division where everyone else is fully professional. So it gets harder every year. It gets more and more competitive. And I think, the challenge is, how do you drive more revenue through the club to increase the playing budget? And ultimately that'd help. But you've got to go into the season believing you can do it. Otherwise you're really going to struggle.
I'm going to ask a question, and again, very blunt of me. Do you feel last season was the opportunity to get promoted, and was this season potentially coming up going to be one that you'd have looked and gone, this is going to be really tricky to get out of now? Do you feel it was not a missed opportunity, but the opportunities in the past 2 years were a bit better than what would have been next season?
Well, yeah, I think, I mean, I said it earlier on, I think that you do work in cycles at Halifax because you can't just literally go out and pay the wages you need to pay to get a playoff team immediately. You've got to have a slightly longer term plan. You've got to have a longer term vision, and that might involve recruiting and developing players who might not be ready today, but in 6, 12, 18 months are definitely going to be National League ready or better. So you've got to have that long-term vision. I definitely felt last season, if we'd have kept even just a handful of our sort of stronger players available to us, we'd have been able to compete much better towards the end of the season. I think that would have led to a higher placed finish in the league, which should have hopefully led to a home game in the playoffs, which of course the pitch wasn't great, but having your own stadium full of your own fans would be a definite benefit going into the playoffs. So I think it was a big opportunity for us. There's a whole lot of recruitment got to go on, so I think the team can remain competitive for a playoff finish. Winning promotion or winning the league might be a little bit of a stretch this coming season because it'll take time for the new manager to bed in a new squad. But certainly, I think Adam's come out and said his aspiration is a playoff finish, and I think that clearly should be the objective.
Yeah. Coops, just to add another question from Nathan. Any regrets from your time at Halifax?
No, don't really live with regrets, unfortunately. I think we're massively challenged throughout it, both just professionally. It's an absolute tough league, not by anyone's fault, by anyone's design. It's brutal. It's relentless. Saturday, Tuesday, 6 in a row, 7 in a row, length and breadth of the country. So you make the decisions in the moment that you can. Ultimately, we didn't achieve the mission of getting the club into the EFL, but it's not a regret. It's just a disappointment, and we've got to learn and be better for the future. But not one that lives with regrets in terms of decisions that we made or signings or training methods or style, or you do what you at the time you feels right and part of the process. And we're very driven by process and work that we do to try and get the best and maximise out of the squad that we had, and I feel like we did that.
Perfect.
What
Go on, Chris.
Yeah, I guess I'll take a couple of these. We'll rattle through a few of these quite quickly if we can. I like this one because it's just a very simple question. This one's from Rob, who says, for both of you, was managing Halifax Town as much fun as you both expected when you took on your roles? I love the idea that you can just look at it and think, is it a fun job? Is it as good as it looks when you sat at home playing Football Manager?
I think I wouldn't describe any job in football as fun, to be honest with you. It's tough, it's all consuming at all times, but there were some really, really wonderful moments. And one of the things that really keeps me coming back day in, day out to the industry and kept me coming back to Halifax were the relationships that are built over the time there with, the backroom staff, the media team, the lads coming in and working in the commercial department, the players in particular, the fans, the away fans. They're insane, aren't they? Travelling all over the country, come rain or shine, to support the team. But those relationships that you build up, that's where the real joy is, and that's where the real value is, for sure.
Andy, did you enjoy it? Have fun?
That is a great question, because it doesn't fit. It's just a lifestyle. It's not a job. It's fully consuming. You're just in it all the time. And maybe this break now will give us a chance to look back and see that there was fun moments. But look, I enjoyed my time. I did, but yeah, there's not too many fun moments. And it's relief when you win, and it's a really worrying trait that a lot of people in Football Managers think the same. And I'm no different. We won at Wembley, and they want a massive party for us. It was just relief.
That's fair enough. Just also want to mention a comment from Gary. I think his name's Gary Templeman. He says, "Can you wish them both the very best for the future? Two great guys. Dare say to see them go." And he also said that you'll know who he is because he says he's the tunnel steward at the Shay. So he's been in touch to pass on his well wishes as well. Stephen says, "What was your favourite and least favourite game whilst managing the Shaymen?" I mean, let's take out the FA Trophy final and let's take out the playoff defeats as least favourites. Anything else that comes to mind for you? Your favourite games and your least favourite games?
Yeah, I think for me the favourite was Wrexham, the Good Friday game, which I've mentioned, where we not only did we beat them quite convincingly, but we deserved to beat them quite convincingly. You know, we beat them 3-1, and nobody could complain at the result. We were fantastic that day. There are a number of other similar performances. Chesterfield at home this season, they won the division. I thought we were very good and dominant. So yeah, there were a few of those against the big boys where you come away going, we're a decent team, us. We can really do some damage in this division. I think disappointing that there's not that many really. I think there are games where they've not gone to plan. There are games where you've been undone by refereeing decisions. There have been, plenty of games where you know you could have done better. I think
you've done better than us, chaps. I'm sorry to interrupt, Chris, but we're in hour 20 into this interview.
I was just thinking,
it's the first time we've mentioned referees, which is probably a first.
How have we got an hour and 20 in and we haven't spoke about officiating at National League level? Because there's somebody that say, I don't know if Lou's mentioned it previously, one of my roles is commentary for Rochdale, and there's somebody that sees officiating on a week in, week out basis at National League level. I cannot believe we haven't mentioned it. Sorry to interrupt. We'll come to Coops on that one in a moment, but I mean, sorry, Chris, to continue.
No, it's all right. It is painful at times, the refereeing, but you kind of it wears you down, and you kind of just start to accept it after a period of time. But no, I think there are disappointing games, disappointing performances. The fans will have experienced a number, but I think one thing I would say is it's never through lack of effort. One thing that I think can't be levelled against our teams has ever been a lack of effort. The lads have always given everything and been well motivated to do so. So I think there are disappointing times, but most of it, as long as the effort's there and there's an application to try and win the game, we'll take it.
Go on then, Coops. How often do you look at the referees' allocations for the weekend's games and think, "Oh God, not him"?
Well, my low point was Braintree away, so last minute penalty we conceded for the loss. Chris was unwell, and I was leading the team and felt a big responsibility for that. So back at 4 a.m, back at home, and was mortified. That was a low point, I must admit. We took a few hearty souls down there on a Tuesday night after beating Maidenhead on the Saturday away, and we got done with a last minute penalty. So that was awful. In terms of high points, I really like the games against Barnet. I thought we were excellent tactically against some of the big boys in the league, Barnet, York as well. But I'd probably say that Chesterfield game at home where they could have won the league, and we gave them a bit of a good going. And it was, it was a good atmosphere. I think it's always great when the ball's in play loads at the Shay with all the sides filled. So I'd probably say Chesterfield at home last season.
Hello.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard, isn't it, when you're looking back? I mean, it's one of those things that we'll say when you chaps have been in charge, and we've said it on our podcast and with one of our Halifax Town fans as well, that when you turned up against the big boys, you turned up, didn't you? I think that's one thing that can, across the course of a season, you've been consistent, but there was, I say in inverted commas, people outside looking in surprise results when you were turning up against Wrexham. I remember watching a certain podcast as well, a certain goalkeeper, and he filmed a Halifax game, and he couldn't believe what were happening to him. And I think that's absolute credit to you guys. There's a couple combined, I think, really from Dylan as well. He asked, how much of a significant impact did it have on the squad, and probably you as a collective as well, when there was a larger home attendance? You've obviously touched on that with the Chesterfields and the Wrexhams. We know that the Shay is actually, in terms of a non-league stadium in our region, is one of the best ones as well. But when you've got all 4 sides behind you, even sometimes, like you mentioned, might be outnumbered 2-1. There's quite a special atmosphere in the Shay when it gets going. And did that have a big effect on you in those kind of games?
Yeah, I mean, I know Coops always. I'll let him come in a sec on the impact it has actually on what goes on the grass, because it does, and I think that's also worth noting. But I think sometimes, on occasion, Ebbsfleet at home, those types of games, it does feel like there's a real struggle to get the atmosphere going, because it is such a big stadium. It isn't anything to do with the fans as such. You know, they've got to work even harder to create an atmosphere when there's a small away following. But when there's a large away following, the Oldhams, the Rochdales, York City, those types of clubs bring in decent followings. Wrexham on the Good Friday game, you know, those types of games really produce a special atmosphere because you've got two real big sets of fans going at it and creating a football league atmosphere, which is exactly what it is. It's a football league stadium, and when you've got those types of numbers in the ground, the atmosphere is phenomenal, and I think the quality of the football matches it. But I know Coops will have an opinion on that as well.
Yeah, mine's more like stats based, a bit geeky, but the ball in play was an absolute killer. So if all four sides of the Shay were full, we'd get above average played, and there was only two sides. We were the lowest ball in play in the whole league, and I did a piece of work over it over last summer. We submitted it to the league to ask for multi-ball, so we could try and get more tempo to the game, get the game restarted quicker, have the ball boys and girls on the outside with footballs, and it was rejected. Barnet were allowed it in our league because of one stand not being finished or developed at one end. Wrexham were allowed it, but we weren't. It was rejected. It had to go to a vote to the league, to all the clubs in the league, and it was turned down. So if you got an early goal against, teams could sit in against you and kill the tempo of the game. But you're looking at 40%, 45% ball in play time out of your money that you've paid. So I felt the product goes down because the people are in the stands trying to fetch the ball back, which was disappointing. If you go to another game, you're going to get up to 60 minutes or up to 50 to 60 minutes ball in play, and we were down around the 40. So we tried a couple of times to sneak a couple of balls behind seats. We got caught, and there we go. We tried to improve it in our own unique style, but ultimately, I believe, because of the constant nagging and emails, there might be a change this season. So hopefully people will get the benefit of the work we put in.
Fingers crossed. Slightly tongue-in-cheek this one, Chris. I want you to cast your mind back to 2022 when you've a month or two in the job. You're looking at your squad, and for some reason, a certain player isn't there and turns up on ITV2 instead. Of course, Jamie Allen and the whole Love Island situation. I mean, that is not something that the average manager has to deal with for a start. I mean, what happened with that? Was there any inclination? Had he talked to you beforehand to say, look, boss, I'm taking a break from football to go on the telly and hopefully find love? Or was it just out of the blue and you saw when I'm going to say one of your kids was watching ITV2?
Yeah, your Wi-Fi's been working perfectly fine up until this moment as well, chaps. Just to let you know, you can't get out of this one.
Well, it was a funny situation because I'd gone to the chairman, and obviously there was quite a lot of recruitment to do, and I said, look, first and foremost, there's two players in particular I want to get signed quickly. I want to get them nailed down quick. They're low maintenance. They turn up. They do the job. They don't require an arm around the shoulder every 5 minutes. I need to get a few of those lads in the building straight away. We know what they'll deliver. We won't have to be mollycoddling them and babysitting them at all. And one of those players was Jamie Allen. So, I'd give the chairman the big sell on why we needed to retain Jamie, not only from a football perspective, but also from the off the pitch stuff. He's no bother. He's fantastic. He'll be no low maintenance and great to work with. And the chairman backed me, and we went and we got the deals done quickly. And then within a week or two, there was a phone call came in saying, "Listen, I've got a bit of a problem. I've been invited onto this TV show, and I've got to be honest, I didn't know a lot about it. It's not, I'm a grey-haired middle-aged man who doesn't really get involved in that sort of stuff. So I didn't know a great deal about what it was, but I quickly learned and yeah, it was a shock, and I felt for the lad really because I could see what he was trying to do. He was trying to raise a profile that would help him build a better income for himself and his family and what have you. And I've got every respect for that. But yeah, it was a massive curveball as the first layer of adversity to deal with as Halifax chairman, and it was a great eye opener. So yeah, it was that one will definitely make it into the memoirs.
What did the squad make of it? Were they just taking the absolute mickey, or
it was strange actually because there was probably about 75% of the squad. I thought it would really undermine the togetherness and the cohesiveness of the squad, and I thought it presented a real risk to that. But in actual fact, the majority of the players were quite, I guess, a different generation. So they were like, well, yeah, that's fine. I can get it. I completely understand why you would want to do that. So their reaction was very...
everything.
Yeah, well, their reaction was very different from mine. And you can imagine Mr. Bosom, the gentleman of a slightly different persuasion, couldn't quite get his head around why you would want to do that.
I mean, yeah, obviously it was, and the thing is as well, it wasn't just a week stint. It wasn't, he wasn't the first one out. 51 days, I think he was over there, and then he returns, and obviously, I guess you and the chairman are kind of left with a little bit of a decision to make at that point.
Yeah, it was difficult, and it was. I think, it's probably a situation looking back where both the club and the player were of the same mind. It would actually benefit Jamie in his own mind to exploit the opportunity that show presented for him to be a bit more flexible in terms of his availability to do other things, and with that in mind, Jamie's opportunity to do other things, to raise his profile, might impede his ability to be a full-time professional footballer at times. So, I think it was probably a situation where both parties actually knew what the outcome was going to be that would work for both. And I think had we tried to force through that union and stay together a bit longer, it might have ended in tears, but actually it ended really amicably.
I imagine that was difficult for you, Coops, tactically. How you trying to set up 4 in the back, 4 in midfield, and 1 in Marbella?
Yeah, it was my first day. We all walked into pre-season testing, and yeah, it was like, can I have a word? This is happening, and it was just so bizarre. And then trying to find out what was going on, coming back, involved with training. Some of the lads, the banter that was going around, it was, I'd never watched the show. It was so unique. What a journey. Yeah, it was like literally my first day at the testing at Leeds Beckett. We arrived for the place to all the pre-season battery of testings, and his just name wasn't ticked off, and Millie was like, have you got a sec? Yeah, it was all right. Here starts the roller coaster.
Brilliant. So just to wrap it up, chaps, once again, thanks so much for being able to join us. It's really been appreciated. In terms of what's obviously next, we discussed that a little bit earlier, but we know a lot of teams at this moment in time, they get back into pre-season, going through the bleep tests. I mean, players love a bit of pre-season, don't they? And I bet you'll love flogging them up and down them pitches. What does it look like for you guys now? Is it one that you will maybe go into other clubs and see how they're working? Is it will you go see matches? Or is it just still at the moment, a bit of a break, get back just to learning, a bit of clarity for yourselves ahead of next season, whatever that looks like? Beginning with you, Chris.
Yeah, I think in terms of what we do, we're still in the process of going through. Like I keep mentioning, and any fans listening to this will think, my God, they are boring. But we're going through a reflective process over the course of the time we've had at Halifax, so that we can take out the important learnings for ourselves about what we need to do better. It's really easy to point the finger at other people, point the finger at budgets, at the pitch, at various other things that might impact performance and result. But we need to look at ourselves first and foremost and make sure that we take the learnings out of it, and that's what we're still in the process of doing. Certainly we've got opportunities to go in and visit other clubs, see how they're working, see what their preparation looks like and how they operate, what their processes are, what their systems are. So we're going to work on making sure that we get around a good number of clubs to take the learnings that we can out of there. And we're both fortunate enough to be doing the LMA diploma in football management, which again will take up a little bit of time and a little bit of thinking. And that alongside keeping tabs on what players are where and who's moving and what's happening, because all those things are vitally important when you're in the thick of it, knowing who might be available and what the opportunities are for recruitment. And especially when you're in the position we're in at the moment, we don't know what type of club might be next. We don't know what level it might be at. So keeping abreast of all the movements is really important, because it could be useful information going forward.
Would it be something, if an opportunity came up in the short term, medium term, is it somewhere within Yorkshire, Lancashire, or would you potentially be looking further afield if the opportunity was there? Would you both potentially look at that seriously?
Yeah, without a doubt. Never say never. I think we've got to make sure that we're open to whatever comes available. Coops is similar to me. Well, his family's younger, but we've both got relatively young children and we've got families to consider. But if the opportunity was right, I know that they would back us to support us to make sure that we made the most of any opportunity. But of course, there's got to be an element of that that's got to work for the family as well. So, but certainly wouldn't rule out things further afield.
Are you expecting give it a few weeks and the families will be willing you back into jobs, back into work?
Coops?
Yeah. The garden's never looked so good at the minute, so I'm getting chipped out soon. Yeah, I can't do any more there, but DIY, but home improvement, and I'll be getting chipped out to watch some games. And like the saying, club visits, I think it's a really unique industry that people reach out to and say, do you want to come in, spend a day, and exchange ideas. We do the same for other managements as well, the management duos or groups. So we've had people into the training ground when we were obviously in post. So yeah, a bit of that stuff to do just to keep abreast of what's going on in up and down the leagues really. But Chris has nailed it in terms of the stuff. We just keep ourselves busy, keep a structure and make sure that we're ready.
Excellent. All the best. Of course, wish you all the best. We thank you so much, the pair of you, for taking the time to come on and what has ended up being over an hour and a half worth of interview. We really do appreciate you taking the time this morning to join us here on the West Yorkshire Football Show.
Yeah, no, can I just say how grateful we are for the invite as well. It's a real pleasure to be invited on and to share this time with you. And you were really gentle with us. I thought you could have gone in 2-footed on a couple of occasions, but you've been very very gentle in the way you've dealt with us.
We'll wait for you to be back in work for that one, Chris, and then we'll see what that holds. Excellent.
We'll let you have this reflection, Chris, and then we're going to come back in a few weeks, and I'm here.
We'll have all the answers for you by then, so that's all right.
Excellent. Cheers, gents. Thanks for taking the time. It's really appreciated.
Right, thanks again.